Hey guys, King of Charmanders here. Today I bring you a video on the preseason 6 tier list. Hunting Horn is meta with a question mark, and we have the weapon rebalance analysis. So this video is a pre-analysis of season 6, and we're going to look at where Hunting Horn will possibly be, along with how the rebalances from season 5 may affect season 6. Alright, let's jump right into it. We're going to start off with the C tier, the lowest tier. Now, don't get me wrong. No matter where anything placed is in here, it doesn't really matter because all of them are practically good. This just compares mechanics, etc. And unfortunately, even though it's brand spanking new, in the C tier, we have the Switch Axe. So despite all of the buffs it has made into it, it's still slow and vulnerable windows to take damage. So there's a new morph attack that has been given that gives you a safer range. The problem is, it takes a lot of skill, not really easy to use, and it's complicated for not having like any great mechanics. For example, like guard point with charge blade. There doesn't have anything that good to where it's like, okay, this is amazing. This doesn't mean the Switch Axe is bad. It just means something has to take the bottom, and for what it's worth, if you take everything into consideration, including the mechanical improvements with the Season 5 rebalance, it's not notable or has any overpowered mechanics, again, like charge blades, guard point, or long swords, spirit gauge. Moving on, we end up in the B tier, and we have the hammer in the B tier. Unfortunately, again, with the balances, etc., hammer went down a notch because large vulnerable windows to get hit by monsters, and it's pretty easy to use, but the problem is it's really slow, and to stun you need to hit the head. With new flying and mobile monsters and things that are just really big like Glavenus, Zinogre, and of course things that fly like Rathalos and Silver Rathalos, it's just not that great anymore. It's still good, don't get me wrong, it's still really good. Along with that, the status/stun buildup was actually increased and attacks do more damage now. So it was buffed, it was made so that status, it was a huge problem before where you couldn't inflict status that well, but again, still amazing. But if you line it up again, just like with the Switch Axe, without any notable mechanics and mitigation to its skills, the hammer's dropped in ranking. It's still really good to use, don't get me wrong. It would still technically be, if I had to rate it, in between B and A. But again, just because of all the balances and out, it unfortunately goes down to B. And now, just like that, we jump onto the A tier, starting with the Sword and Shield. Now, the thing is, the Sword and Shield used to be practically one of the worst weapons in the game, but now it has got an improvement for practically almost everything as far as damage or hitting and movement. If you look at all these giant buffs here, the starter weapon just keeps getting better and better. Along with that, the special skill got a boost in damage, so if you tap at the right timing, you'll be able to have increased damage. Now, there's no big gameplay changes for the Sword and Shield, but it's still a huge improvement from the beginning of the game. The Sword and Shield used to be a pretty good laughingstock. It wasn't that great. But now, with all these changes, Sword and Shield got a much needed buff, and again, it's the beginner weapon you use, and since the dawn of time, it was disrespected and slowly got better to the point it is right now. Up next, we have the Great Sword. And the Great Sword got a lot of amazing buffs. This is one of the weapons that actually got a jump in ranking because status ailments got buffed, so now you could tackle spam status. If you've seen some content out there, people are literally cheesing sleep or whatever status ailment you want to, and then smacking it with charge level 3. By the way, charge level 3 got an enormous buff, so now charge level 3 slashes are now 60% stronger than level 2, which is why Greatsword has been absolutely dominating the 9-star and 10-star dominance, especially with those like aggressive dodger builds, etc. It belongs in A tier. Yes, you get punished a lot, but because of a lot of its buffs, it now can do a ridiculous amount of damage with its full charge attacks, and the status ailment problem is now fixed. Status infliction was actually a big problem with the Greatsword because you couldn't inflict it quickly. Now you could just spam shoulder tackle, which is your defensive mechanic. And now that these changes made it so that it's good enough. So now that Greatsword now belongs in the A tier. Speaking of A tier, what arguably was the worst weapon in the game is now one of the, not the best, but it's definitely up there. In the A tier, we have Lance. Because it got a big bunch of huge buffs that fixed a lot of problems that the Lance had. It is now one of the most mobile weapons in the game because you can use guard dash and then combo into leaping thrust, which now you can just spam this thing over and over again. So if Lance mains aren't doing this, well, you should learn it because it's incredible and it actually is very good to the point to where it went from being the worst to like one of, again, not the best, but second best at in these tier, is in the A tier. Because now guard dash, what happens is it blocks all incoming attacks, and based on testing, it does 0 chip damage, allowing you to easily activate offensive guard. And again, you just spam this over and over again, with the lance finally getting respect on its name. Although it's not S rank worthy, it's still, the new mechanics are a huge improvement. This was the big problem with lance. It was primarily depending on guard, and it had very poor movement. Now with the movement increase and just this ability to spam guard dash and leaping thrust, a lot of those problems are solved. You don't have to power thrust, power counter or whatever that technique is. Basically, in a nutshell, a lot of mechanics got improved. The lance is as limited as it was before, and now it's really good. Up next, you got the Charge Blade, and the Charge Blade got some good buffs in this update. Status element is now easier to inflict, and the elemental discharge and the files for elemental discharge, well, elemental files, you know, you have impact, the regular ones, and then you have elemental. So the elemental ones, they got buffed. And the thing about the Charge Blade, not much has changed. It's still A tier for the fact that it's still probably the most technical weapon in the game, and guard point is incredible if you're able to proc it and blocks so many attacks. So Charge Blade still belongs in A. Again, some buffs, not really too many things that are notable, but Charge Blade is still A tier and will be A tier for a very long time. And speaking of A tier for a long time, you have the light bowgun. Literally no massive update this time around. The special skill got slightly buffed, that's it. Nothing really to celebrate here. The thing about light bowgun, the reason why ranged weapons are still good is the fact that they let you save potions, because you're out of close attack range. So you're just able to point and shoot and smack its head to oblivion if you're using those sticky ammo. But yeah, nothing much to celebrate with the light bowgun. Still good, again, just because it's a long range weapon. On to the next one, where we have the light, we also have the heavy bowgun. The thing is, the heavy bowgun did not receive any big buffs, but both special skills got slightly buffed. And it's still relatively the same. You can guard, just a slower version of light bowgun that still saves you potions. I really want to rocket myself off my heavy bowgun, just like the main series games, but you know, we don't have that yet. So maybe one day, like a switch skill or something, it'll be in there. But yes, still the same, not a lot of changes. In this rank of A, just because it does heavy damage, lets you stay in range, and with the heavy bowgun, you can still guard. And last but not least, speaking of guard, which you're not going to guard much anyways, you have the gun lance. So the gun lance didn't get much buffs. It basically just got a new way to get to worm stake cannon from burst fire. Other than that, no mechanical changes, etc. All you're going to do with this is basically stick it in the bottom with your worm stake shot, and then inflict a status ailment and or charge shelling. That's pretty much the two ways you're going to do it. Worm stake shot or charge shelling, specifically towards element. And the gun lance is still really good, just because of its ability to do a ridiculous amount of damage and being one of the cheesiest weapons. Well, it's still the cheesiest weapon in the game, but you get what I mean. Not many changes, still poking, still blasting, and you're just going to keep on blasting. And just like blasting off like Team Rocket, we're going to blast off into the S tier. This is the cream of the crop, the most powerful weapons in the game. And of course, where it has stayed and hasn't gone anywhere, it actually got much better, was the dual blades. So the dual blades got some huge buffs. You can now do Demon Blade Dance after entering Demon mode. So Demon mode's most powerful combo, which used to be at the end, you can now do it after you just activate it. Not only that, the Blade Dance got a buff, and attacks outside of Demon mode got more powerful. Outside of Demon mode doesn't really matter much, because you want to activate Demon mode as much as possible and just spam its combo over and over again. With that being said, the dual blades was still an S tier before, and now it just keeps getting better and better. Being able to enter Demon Blade Dance after Demon mode is just busted, your most powerful combo. It used to be a problem before because you had to do the initial 4 strikes and then it was the last 3 at the end, I believe. But that's what the big problem was with dual blades. Now that's solved, so now this thing just became even more powerful than before. However, what was always powerful and is still powerful, the longsword. S tier always, because the longsword is just that good. Spirit gauge will now get recovered after you land spirit thrust, so some minor changes that actually are really good, because we know that spirit gauge for the longsword is amazing. And it's still broke just because of that boost you get because of the spirit gauge. The only thing that's really interesting, and it's probably the only cosmetic one, is you get a rebalance skill with a cosmetic upgrade. So with Quick Work level 3, you get a special sheath animation when you have that skill max. So yay. If you want to look cool, there you go. But the reason why Longsword is still in S tier is because, again, Spirit Gauge boost. Prairie is broken the end. You don't need to say much about it. Longsword is where it belongs. It was always that dang good, especially in the main series, and it is still that good and will probably be forever. And to finish it off, you have the S tier, the goat of goats, the ranged of ranged, the bow. And it got a much needed buff actually. Actually, probably more than it needed. So rapid arrows got buffed and +1 arrows for every level of charge. This is huge because if you're activating things like burst or things that require you to hit things to activate, it makes it much better. And rapid was the weakest arrow type in the game, and now in comparison to spread and pierce, they made it better. So I wasn't crazy. Yes, rapid is weaker. There you go. It's literally right here. But now it got buffed. And another buff you got for the bow is that charge level 4. So charge level 4 was also always a big problem, because outside of motion values / different styles, for example, if you have the Kushala bow, if you go from level 3 to level 4, you go from spread to pierce. And it was pretty useless for super bows. If you had something like Black Diablo's bow, there was no reason, again, unless it's motion values, to go to level 4. Now you do have a reason to go to level 4 because you do more damage. So that's enticing for you to build all the other bows, but again, unless it's a super bow, unless you really want to build it, it's not worth it. And super bows and the fact that the bow is just the way it is with charge sidestep is the reason why bow will probably forever be S tier. And no one's hiding it. It was literally on the art for the 1-year anniversary. They put a Black Diablo's armor hunter with Black Diablo's bow. So the Bigelows bow, and again the bow, amazing, will always be amazing, and will probably be the greatest ranged weapon of all time in Monster Hunter now, forever. And now, outside of one remaining weapon type, unless they decide to put a new one into Monster Hunter now, you have the Hunting Horn. Rejoice, you musical hammer bros, because now you don't have to wait for your weapon anymore. It's literally coming out. Now, here's where I will kind of predict where Hunting Horn will land. It's either B or A. And the problem with Hunting Horn itself is that, unlike the main series games, each monster type has a specific boost. So some are going to be relatively worthless in comparison to others, depending on which Hunting Horn monster type you are building. And it's mainly a support weapon. The problem is, if you don't have a community like I do, you don't have friends to play with because all my friends play Pokemon Go, no one plays Monster Hunter now, you unfortunately are going to not have much use of the Hunting Horn unless you are using matchmaking, global matchmaking like Huntathons or Elder Dragons. That doesn't mean it's bad. Another limitation of the Hunting Horn is a lot of people that are hyping this out and putting the footage out there. It's either using the training dummy or for group hunts. The training dummy doesn't hit back. So if you're trying to solo a monster and you're trying to get the right notes off, etc., it's going to be not that user-friendly. And again, you're mainly boosting other people. That's why the musical bard. I'm not saying it's bad. Hunting Horn is amazing. We're just going to see how it plays out in Monster Hunter now as far as its implementation into the game. Because unless you test it and you do the numbers, you can't really figure out whether it's going to be great or not. Regardless, hopefully you are excited for the Hunting Horn. A lot of these rebalances were needed, especially for weaker weapons like the Lance. So for those of you Lance bros that were like, oh my gosh, King of Charmanders is, you always put it at the end. Why is it always C tier? Because, you know, if you want something to get better, you kind of have to point out its flaws and complain about it. You can't sugarcoat it and pretend you know what you're talking about and pretend that it's good. Otherwise, nothing changes. So yes, that's where data and feedback comes into play. Because yeah. But speaking of feedback, again, a lot of these balances were much needed, and it's good to see a lot of improvements are still coming into the game, especially with how long it's been out. So please do me a huge favor, like, subscribe, and comment for YouTube algorithm. Hopefully y'all are excited for Season 6. I am for the Hunting Horn, not so much for everything else. But regardless, good luck on your grinds, and I will see y'all on the next video.